Despite being such a vocal proponent for Android over the last couple of years, I've kind of been secretly using the iPhone 15 Pro Max as my daily driver. But how did it get here? If you've watched some of my recent content about the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you'll have probably been aware that this wasn't really a smooth transition for me. And despite being really excited for it, a lot of problems persisted. My white iPhone 15 Pro Max that I picked up on launch day had been plagued with various issues like overheating and very rapid degradation in battery life, probably caused by the former. This did seem to be well and good after the iOS 17.0.3 update that had supposedly fixed this issue, but just a few short days later, the problem got even worse. So then I did what anyone would do in this situation. Instead of complaining about it, I actually asked Apple for an extended return period, which to my surprise, they allowed it. I did this because I wanted to make sure that I didn't get a replacement using some of the same parts that I had in my previous device, and instead a brand new one that I was able to purchase and pick up that day. How's the experience been though? Flawless. I cannot believe how night and day this transition has been from my previous iPhone to this natural titanium 15 Pro Max. Not only does it work great, but thankfully I was able to secure the color that I wanted initially, so I guess everything happens for a reason. Okay, but this doesn't explain the reason why I switched to iPhone. Like, the phone works now. Good job, it's kind of doing what it's supposed to, and that should have been the out-of-box experience. But honestly, there's a lot more to this, and we're gonna have to take a deep dive as to how exactly I use my device. But before we do, a like and a sub to the channel is always appreciated. I just want to say thank you so much for the support recently. We're actually getting really close to 30,000 subs on the channel, and if we can hit that before Christmas, I would be like forever in your debt. Thank you. I'm a completely different person than I was 2 years ago. I had a custom-built PC, a Windows laptop, I didn't make content, and I had a regular 9 to 5. I didn't do anything that necessarily revolved around my smartphone. So it didn't really matter at the end of the day which device I chose to daily drive. And often I ended up just going with what piqued my interest. My transition to Android and how I found it extremely compelling is what kind of kickstarted this channel. And it landed me in a niche that I didn't exactly plan for. However, making smartphone content has been really fun, and I'm really glad how this has kind of landed because I love doing this sort of thing. I love playing around with new devices day in and out, and it's always something that's really exciting. But why the iPhone out of all things, as it's somewhat against everything that I've come to love over the last couple years, and it leaves me with a few growing pains and problems that won't get solved until Mr. Tim Apple decides to really rework iOS. It's no surprise that one of the things that keeps people forced into holding onto their iPhone is the ecosystem of products that seamlessly work well together. With things like iMessage and FaceTime across all devices, and being able to quickly share files with AirDrop, and even have the ability to use your iPad as a secondary display with Sidecar, it's no surprise that people continue to buy into this ecosystem to get the most out of their products. And as my workflow has become more complicated and more demanding over the years, I've really had to look for an alternative to my PC, and also something that I can take with me to travel and edit on the go. This is where this baby came into play. This is my M2 Pro 14-inch MacBook Pro. As I was in the process of moving, I had to really rely on this thing to make sure to stick to my weekly upload schedule without having an office and whilst having my computer packed and ready for the move. This was an insane eye-opener for me. I pumped out 4 videos, unplugged, laying on the couch, and this thing did not even break a sweat. Not only that, but it was quite literally a fraction of the price from the computer that I was using beforehand. It honestly often left me scratching my head as to why I didn't just switch to this thing as my daily driver. So I did, and I've been using it literally ever since. And then I ended up here with a 16-inch M3 Max MacBook Pro, as I wanted a larger display for when I edited away from home. I also wanted more storage, more memory, a bigger battery, and previously I only went with the base model as this was supposed to be a secondary computer. And now, upgrading to the M3 Max, This is something that is going to last me for years. I've been a Mac only editor for about 6 months now though, and I really haven't looked back. Also, being able to take these images and video via AirDrop over to my Mac has honestly made editing and dragging and dropping these things into my timeline literally second nature, which honestly used to be a really tedious task on Windows. The way the iPhone integrates with macOS has been a huge turning point for me in this, as all of my apps like Calendar and Notes are synced across 2 devices, and I don't need to rely on very many third-party applications. This has made things like keeping tabs on reminders and projects so much easier for someone like me who has had a terrible time scheduling content and organizing my work in literally any way. It's just been amazing to work with. What's really nice is that I'm able to use my AirPods Pro 2nd Gen across both of these devices without having to switch between them. I pick up my phone and start a call, and it instantly takes the audio from this device. I go back to the Mac and start scrubbing through my timeline, and I'm already on the computer listening to what I'm editing. Like, it's just so damn intuitive that it makes everything so much easier. On to the device itself though, because believe it or not, it has its own merits. Finally, the camera on the 15 Pro Max is fantastic. I wouldn't put the out of camera stills quality above something like the Pixel 8 Pro, but this 15 Pro Max has some of the sharpest images with some of the best low light performance that I've seen on a smartphone to date. The raw images on the 15 Pro Max are also a dream to work with in Lightroom, and it's also helped make some pretty pleasing stills for sharing products or architecture on social media like my Twitter. By the way, if you're not following me on Twitter, it's just @Valley'sMine, so what are you waiting for? And now with the inclusion of the 5x telephoto, I don't really feel like I'm at a disadvantage or missing anything when I choose to use the iPhone. But it's not all about the stills performance, because honestly the video capabilities of this phone are insane, and it's been kind of taking the tech space by storm recently. Not only can the iPhone 15 Pro Max shoot directly to an SD card or an SSD with ProRes HDR video, but it can also shoot in a format called log. If you're unfamiliar with what log is, it's basically like shooting raw images with all of that color data and information, but for video, so you're able to kind of tweak the colors and grade it however you like without having to deal with the pre-built-in color space of this device. It is also giving you a 10-bit image which is lacking in sharpness, which gives you an image that is more so resemblant of a mirrorless camera rather than a smartphone. It's genuinely nice to know that I can use my phone in a pinch to film content such as day in the lives or even B-roll if I forget to take my camera to location when filming other devices. It's also easy to work with as there are a ton of conversion LUTs out there ready to bring this thing into a color space like Rec 709. Now, this is a weird one because I don't really like iOS, or at least how locked down this is compared to everything else that's out there. I don't like that still for the life of me, I can't move my app icons anywhere I want to on the home screen. And don't even get me started on the navigation. Like, why can't I swipe from either side of the bezel to take me back out of an app? Why do I have to do it from the hardest to reach part of this display? It's shortcomings like these that make the phone feel stupid. However, iOS has a lot going for it when it comes to app compatibility and performance that make this device really easy to gravitate toward as a content creator. Whether it's apps like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, I can do anything that I want to on this device without losing features or performance and quality in, say, something like the camera, for example. On Android, depending on the device and the application that you're using, you might not actually be getting all of the features from the apps that you have. For example, YouTube is a big one where I have this community post feature where I'm able to communicate with you guys through text, through images, and it helps me gauge conversation and whether or not a video would be worth making or not. It's something that is honestly really important as a creator, and this is a feature that is somewhat unavailable on something like the Z Fold series, for example, and it's something that I've really struggled with. It's not because the phone can't do it, it's because when the phone is unfolded, it thinks that it's a tablet. And because of this, it doesn't have the feature. You can only access it when on the cover display, which is not the biggest problem in the world, but it's little shortcomings like these that kind of make it annoying. Not only that, but if I wanted to make a YouTube short, I'm better off just grabbing a mirrorless camera and putting the extra work in to make it look appealing rather than take it from a smartphone that is using Android. And a lot of this is because most Android smartphones don't actually have native camera pass-through in apps like YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. It's only really recently that Samsung has started nailing this optimization in apps like Snapchat, for example, And it's kind of silly that it's taken this long, but as someone who relies on social media as an income, I can't really deal with some of these small little problems. And when it comes to making content, the last thing that you want to do is have half-assed, grainy footage that just kills the watch time. And honestly, that's just how it is. And when it comes to app performance, I've just had a better time on my iPhone. Exporting a batch of photos in Lightroom is flawless and snappy. Apps like X work without any scrolling issues, load content without a problem, and are really reliable on the iPhone, something that I was having an issue with on the Pixel. And let me be clear, it's not like these Android devices can't do it. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is a really performant and capable SoC. Same thing with the 8 Gen 3. The 8 Gen 3 actually kind of runs circles around the A17 Pro in benchmarks. But in practice, it really just comes down to the app developers. And the truth is, it's much easier to develop for a handful of iPhones than the entire lineup of Android devices. There are also so many instances where an app that I've really needed wasn't available on Android and I've had to use an iPhone to run it. Things like this app behind me can only be controlled with an iPhone, and this is kind of something that's important for these videos. And when it comes to devices that I use to film these videos, I found that things like the Rode Central app just work better on iPhone, allowing me to do more with it, and I don't get as many problems or disconnection issues that I have on Android. Another app, for example, is the DJI Mimo app, which again just seems to work better on iOS, and as much as it sucks, these are all devices that I really rely on for when it comes to creating content. Now, I wouldn't call myself a heavy phone user. I can be somewhat of a power user, but I spread my workflow and usage across various other devices, so most of my time spent on the iPhone is very little compared to others. However, this is one of, if not still, the best batteries that I've used in a smartphone. With my usage, I'm able to easily get 2 days out of it, and that's with about 2.5 to 4 hours of screen on time each day. Granted, that's mostly on Wi-Fi, and I don't do things like GPS as I really don't go out that much anymore since having my seizure, but I just trust this device's battery so much more than other phones that I've used. In fact, the most recent was the Pixel 8 Pro, which did have amazing battery life, but the standby time was absolutely atrocious, which kind of made going to that second day a lot harder. So all in all, this has just been making absolute light work out of everything that I've thrown at it. Now, I would also be lying if I said that things like iMessage and FaceTime didn't really mean much to me, and that this is something that I could easily live without, because most of my family, literally everyone on my side of the family, uses an iPhone, along with every single one of my friends, my cousin, and my wife. It is just the easiest way to contact them, and when it comes to FaceTime, everyone has it and it's always accessible. This is definitely a problem that is really only here in North America, but it's something that we just kind of have to live with. That being said, this isn't really much of a deal, as I have had to use apps like Beeper and stuff to get around this, but when it comes to everyone else, no one really wants to download third-party applications like WhatsApp to make communication more accessible for other people. They're just going to use what they have. But I will say the native integration on Google Messages with RCS is much better. And if there was a messaging app that I genuinely prefer to use, it has to be Google Messages by far. I'm not exactly fond of having to use iMessage, but everyone does. That being said, I do want to say that the iPhone 15 Pro Max isn't the best phone that you can buy. And while I have been using it, that doesn't mean that I'm happy with the limitations that are forced on the end user. And secondly, it doesn't matter what phone lives in my pocket, as whenever I review a smartphone, it becomes my daily driver until I feel like it's not worth covering anymore. Whether that's a week, a month, whatever, I will always give a fair, unbiased look into the tech that I find interesting, and that's just it. I don't cover anything on this channel that I don't care about or that I'm not curious about. Everything that I take a look at is something that I have a really fond interest in, and I think that's what makes me feel so passionate about the devices that I'm reviewing. So before you go shit on me for pocketing an iPhone and call me a fraud, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.